I never thought my 27th birthday would be the day my whole world crumbled. Standing in our dimly lit living room, clutching my house keys, I stared at my mother's cold, expressionless face as she uttered the words that would forever change my life. "I want you out of this house by tomorrow." The irony wasn't lost on me. This was the same house whose mortgage I'd been paying for the past 5 years. The same house where every utility bill, every grocery receipt, every maintenance cost had my name on it. The same house where I'd sacrificed my dreams, my savings, and my youth to keep everything running smoothly. "Mom, what are you talking about?" My voice wavered, but I fought to keep my composure. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the curtains I'd bought last spring, casting long shadows across the floor. The room felt smaller than ever, the air thick with tension. "I've thought about this for a while, Emma," she replied, her voice eerily calm, as if she were discussing the weather. "It's time for you to move on. I need my space." She smoothed her perfectly pressed blouse, another item I'd purchased, for her birthday just months ago. The weight of years of sacrifice pressed down on my chest. Every extra shift I'd picked up at the hospital, every promotion I'd earned, every bonus I'd received, all of it had gone into this house, into supporting her, into maintaining the illusion of a loving family. I'd been so blind. "What about the bills?" I managed to ask, though I already knew the answer. "The mortgage? The utilities?" She waved her hand dismissively, a gesture that sent chills down my spine. "You'll figure something out. You always do." The casual cruelty in her voice made my stomach turn. "You can keep paying them, of course. That's the least you could do for your mother." In that moment, something inside me shattered. Years of conditioning, of putting her needs first, of believing that if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, she would finally see me. All of it crumbled like a house of cards. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw not my mother, but a stranger who had been using me all along. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone. Without a word, I opened my banking app and stared at the joint account we shared, the account that had been draining my life, savings for years. My finger hovered over the close account button as tears blurred my vision. "What are you doing?" Her voice carried a hint of panic now, the first real emotion I'd heard from her all day. "Figuring something out," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "Like I always do." The sound of my finger tapping the screen echoed in the silence. In that simple action, I felt the first stirrings of something unfamiliar. Not guilt, not fear, but a fierce, burning sense of liberation. My birthday present to myself would be freedom, even if it came wrapped in pain. Looking back, I should have seen the signs years ago. They were scattered throughout my childhood like breadcrumbs leading to this inevitable moment. I remember the day I got my first job at 16, working weekends at the local diner. Mom had been so proud, not of my initiative or responsibility, but of the extra income I could bring home. "My smart girl," she'd said, patting my cheek. "Always thinking of ways to help the family." Family. That word had been her weapon of choice, wielded with surgical precision whenever she needed something from me. And I, desperate for her approval, had fallen for it every time. By 18, I was working full-time while attending community college. My classmates planned spring break trips and campus activities, but I was too busy covering our electricity bills and grocery shopping. Mom had stopped working by then, claiming various ailments that never seemed to manifest when she wanted to, go shopping or meet her friends for lunch. "You're so good with money, Emma," she'd praise me, hands outstretched for the weekly allowance I'd started giving her. "I was never good at these things. Thank goodness I have you." Each compliment was carefully crafted to ensure I'd keep providing, keep sacrificing, keep believing that this was what love looked like. I excelled at my nursing studies, not because I was passionate about healthcare, though I grew to love it, but because I knew it would provide a stable income. Every career decision, every financial choice was filtered through the lens of, how will this help Mom? I turned down a dream job in Seattle because she couldn't bear the thought of me moving away. I canceled my plans to pursue a specialized certification because the tuition money was needed for house repairs. The house. God, the house. I remember the day she called me at work, voice trembling with excitement. "Emma, I found the perfect home for us," she'd exclaimed. "But we need to act fast. The bank needs a cosigner with good credit." At 22, I became a homeowner, though my name was conspicuously absent from the deed. Only my signature on the mortgage papers mattered. My friend Sarah had tried to warn me. "Emma, this isn't normal," she'd say, watching me calculate bills late into the night. "You're her daughter, not her personal ATM." But I'd defend Mom, reciting the familiar script about family obligations and maternal sacrifice. How many times had Mom reminded me of the birthday parties she'd thrown when I was little, the school supplies she'd bought, the meals she'd cooked. Now, standing in our kitchen. No, her kitchen. I traced my finger along the granite countertops I'd installed last year. Every corner of this house held a memory of my financial contributions, each one matched by a corresponding withdrawal of my mother's affection. The refrigerator hummed softly, filled with groceries I'd bought, in a kitchen I'd renovated, in a house I paid for but would never own. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I had never been a daughter to her. I had been an investment, carefully cultivated to provide maximum returns. And now, on my birthday of all days, the dividend she sought was my complete surrender, my emotional and financial submission packaged as familial duty. The first signs of my mother's retaliation came swiftly. Within hours of closing our joint account, my phone erupted with messages from relatives. Aunt Carol's text dripped with accusation. "How could you do this to your own mother?" Cousin Rachel called me heartless. Uncle Jim lectured me about family loyalty. It was amazing how quickly Mom had mobilized her troops, casting herself as the victim of her ungrateful daughter. I sat in my car outside Sarah's apartment, scrolling through the barrage of messages. Each one twisted the knife deeper, but not in the way they intended. These same relatives had watched for years as I drained my savings to support Mom. None of them had ever questioned why a 20-something was responsible for an entire household. None had offered help when I worked double shifts to cover property, taxes. My phone buzzed again. Mom's name appeared on the screen, accompanied by a photo of us from happier times, or what I'd thought were happier times. The message made my hands shake. The electricity company called. They're threatening to disconnect service. "Is this what you want? To see your mother suffer in the dark?" I could picture her typing that message, probably sitting in her favorite armchair, the one I'd reupholstered last summer. She would have that familiar look of calculated distress, the one she'd perfected over years of emotional manipulation. How many times had I seen that expression and rushed to fix whatever was causing her discomfort? "You need to respond to your mother," came another text from Aunt Carol. "She's beside herself with worry. What kind of daughter treats her mother this way? What kind of mother treats her daughter like an ATM?" I wanted to reply. What kind of mother kicks her child out on their birthday after years of financial exploitation? But I remained silent, letting their messages pile up unanswered. Sarah found me still sitting in my car an hour later. Without a word, she opened the passenger door and slid in beside me. "I brought wine," she said, pulling a bottle from her bag. "And I ordered your favorite pizza." "They all think I'm horrible," I whispered, showing her my phone. "Mom's telling everyone I abandoned her, that I'm being cruel and selfish." "What's cruel is making your child responsible for your entire life," Sarah replied firmly. "What's selfish is taking advantage of your daughter's love for years and then throwing her out when she finally stands up for herself." My phone chimed. Again. This time, it was a group message from Mom to the entire family. "Please pray for Emma. She's not herself lately. She's making choices that hurt her family, and I'm worried about her mental state. The calculated precision of her words made me feel sick. She was systematically destroying my reputation, ensuring that any attempt I made to tell my side of the story would be dismissed as the ravings of an unstable person. It was a masterclass in manipulation, one I'd seen her perform countless times, with others, but never directed at me with such force. "You know what?" Sarah said, taking my phone and turning it off. "Tonight we're not going to think about any of this. Tonight we're going to celebrate your birthday properly. Tomorrow we'll figure out your next steps. But right now, you need to remember what it feels like to not carry the weight of someone else's life on your shoulders." As Sarah led me up to her apartment, I felt the first tentative stirrings of relief. Behind me, my phone stayed dark and silent in the car, along with years of guilt and obligation. Ahead lay uncertainty, but also the possibility of freedom, a birthday gift I never knew I needed. That first night at Sarah's, sleep eluded me. Lying on her comfortable guest bed, I found myself doing something I'd never allowed before: calculating. Not the usual calculations of bills and budgets, but tallying the true cost of my mother's love. Pulling out my laptop, I began to create a spreadsheet, a habit from years of managing household finances, but this time with a different purpose. Mortgage payments, $1,500 monthly for 5 years. Utilities, averaging $300 monthly. Home repairs, $15,000 last year alone. Property taxes, insurance, groceries, her allowance, the numbers kept growing. By 3 a.m., I had documented over $150,000 that I'd poured into maintaining my mother's lifestyle. But the financial tally wasn't what kept me awake. It was remembering all the dreams I'd quietly buried alongside those payments. The Seattle job I'd turned down would have doubled my salary. The specialized cardiac care certification I'd abandoned would have opened doors to advancement. The small pottery studio I'd dreamed of opening, I still had the business plan tucked away in a folder labeled Someday. Someday is a dangerous word, I whispered to myself in the darkness. It was my mother's favorite promise. Someday, you'll have time for your own life, Emma. Someday, all this sacrifice will be worth it. Family first, and someday it will be your turn. As dawn broke, I opened a new document and began to type. No more spreadsheets. This was a different kind of accounting. I wrote down every manipulation, every guilt trip, every time she'd used my love against me. The pattern was so clear now. My mother didn't just want my money. She wanted control. Financial dependence was her favorite tool, but emotional manipulation was her true art. I remembered the time I'd mentioned wanting to take a weekend art class. She'd developed mysterious migraines that only struck on weekends. When I'd started dating Michael last year, she'd suddenly needed me home every evening to help with housework. The housework that somehow never existed when she hosted her bridge club or went shopping with friends. The sun was fully up when I finally formed my plan. I wouldn't confront her. That would only feed into her narrative of me being unstable and cruel. Instead, I would do what I'd always done: manage resources carefully and strategically. But this time, those resources would include my time, my energy, and my emotions. First step, secure my important documents. I made a mental note to visit the bank and ensure she couldn't access any of my accounts. Second, contact the utility companies and formally remove my name from all services. Third, document everything. If she wanted to paint me as the villain, I would have a paper trail showing exactly why I'd taken these steps. My phone lay silent on the nightstand, still turned off. I knew what I would find when I turned it on. More messages, more guilt, more flying monkeys sent to bring me back in line. But for the first time, I saw them for what they were. Not concerned family members, but unwitting pawns in my mother's game. Clear eyes, I wrote at the top of my document. Clear heart, clear conscience. These would be my mantras moving forward. I added one more: clear boundaries, The last one made me smile, a small, fierce expression that felt foreign on my face. For 27 years, I'd been the perfect daughter, anticipating and meeting my mother's every need. Now it was time to become something else, my own person. The bank teller's expression shifted from professional courtesy to genuine concern as I explained what I needed. "You want to check all accounts for unauthorized access?" she asked, typing rapidly on her keyboard. "And set up completely new accounts with enhanced security measures?" "Yes," I replied, my voice steady. "And I need documentation of all transactions from the joint account for the past 5 years." I dressed carefully for this visit, wearing my most professional outfit. No sign of the emotional turmoil beneath my composed exterior. As she pulled up the records, her eyes widened slightly. "Ms. Walker, there are numerous transfers from your personal account to the joint account, regular monthly transfers, plus multiple additional withdrawals." "I'm aware," I said quietly. "Could you print those records for me?" Each statement would be another brick in the wall of truth I was building, not for confrontation, but for protection. Next stop was my lawyer's office. Sarah had recommended her. "Someone completely outside your mother's social circle," she'd insisted. Jennifer Chen's office was modern and bright, her manner direct and understanding. "So you're on the mortgage, but not the deed?" she asked, reviewing my documents. "And you've been making all payments, including property tax?" She shook her head. "Unfortunately, this is more common than you'd think. But we can take steps to protect you going forward." As Jennifer outlined my options, I felt a strange sense of calm settling over me. Each legal document she prepared was like armor being fitted piece by piece, protection against the emotional warfare I knew was coming. My phone buzzed. "Mom again. The water bill is past due. They're threatening to shut it off. Is this how you want people to see you? As someone who lets their mother go without basic necessities?" I showed the message to Jennifer, who nodded grimly. "Classic emotional manipulation. We'll document everything. Have you checked your credit report?" I hadn't, and when we did, my hands started shaking. Multiple credit cards I'd never seen, all linked to my social security number as an authorized user. Department store cards, jewelry store accounts, years of my good credit used without my knowledge. "Deep breaths," Jennifer advised, watching my face. "This is fixable. We'll dispute these immediately and remove your authorization. It's not about punishment. It's about protection." Protection. The word echoed in my mind as I left her office. I'd spent my whole life trying to protect my mother from financial hardship, from discomfort, from the consequences of her own choices. Who had been protecting me? Back at Sarah's, I began the painstaking process of untangling my life from my mother's web. Each phone call to a utility company felt like cutting another string of her puppet master's controls. Each email to a creditor was another step toward freedom. "The electricity's been shut off," came my mother's text that evening. "How could you do this to me, after everything I've done for you?" I stared at the message, feeling the old guilt rising. But this time, something else rose faster. Clarity. Everything she'd done for me. I opened my newly organized financial records. Perhaps it was time for a different kind of accounting. With steady hands, I began to compose an email. Not to my mother, but to myself. Subject line: "The cost of freedom." Inside, I listed every account closed, every tie severed, every boundary established. At the bottom I wrote, "Price of independence, everything I've given. Value of independence, everything I am." The power might be off at my mother's house, but for the first time in my life, I felt truly illuminated. The community center coffee shop had always been my mother's favorite stage for public performances. Today was no exception. I could see her through the window as I approached, perfectly coiffed, dressed in the cashmere sweater I'd bought her last Christmas. surrounded by her usual audience of sympathetic friends. I hadn't planned to come here, but Sarah had texted me, "You need to know what she's saying about you." Now, pausing outside, I could hear my mother's carefully modulated voice carrying through the open door. "I just don't understand what happened. To my sweet Emma," she was saying, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. "She was always such a caring daughter. Now she's turned so cruel. The therapist says it might be a mental breakdown." There was no therapist. I knew this with absolute certainty, just as I knew every calculated pause and theatrical sigh in her performance. What I didn't expect was my own reaction. Not shame, not guilt, but a strange, detached fascination. It was like watching a play I'd seen countless times, but was only now understanding. "Did you hear what she did?" Mom's voice dropped to a stage whisper. She cut off all the utilities. Me, her own mother, sitting in the dark like some abandoned elderly woman. After I sacrificed everything to raise her alone. The coffee shop fell silent as I walked in. My mother's performance stuttered to a halt, her tissue frozen mid-dab. For a moment, our eyes met, and I saw something flicker across her face, not embarrassment at being caught in her lies, but calculation. She was already adjusting her script. "Emma," she exclaimed, half rising from her chair. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so glad you're here. We've all been so worried." "The utilities are in your name now, Mom," I said quietly, my voice carrying in the hushed cafe. "The accounts have been transferred, and I've paid them through the end of the month. You have 2 weeks to arrange payment methods." I placed a manila envelope on her table. "Here's all the information you need, including payment histories and account numbers." Her face shifted through several expressions, settling on wounded confusion. "But honey, you know I can't afford—" "You can sell the jewelry," I continued, my voice still calm. "The pieces you bought with the credit cards you opened in my name. Or maybe use some of the money you transferred from our joint account to your private one. Yes, I have records of those transfers too." The coffee shop was absolutely silent now. Her audience of friends sat frozen, coffee cups halfway to their lips, watching this unexpected plot twist unfold. "I don't know what you're talking about," Mom started, but I held up my hand. "I'm not here to argue or accuse, Mom. I'm here to give you this information and let you know that all the accounts are properly transferred. What you tell people about me, that's your choice. But how you manage your finances from now on, that's also your choice. For the first time in my adult life, it's not my responsibility." I turned to leave, but paused. "Oh, and Mom? I've donated that cashmere sweater's worth to the domestic violence shelter downtown. They help people escape all kinds of abuse, including financial exploitation. I thought you'd want to know your sweater is helping someone else start over." As I walked out, I heard the whispers start. But they weren't the whispers of condemnation I'd feared. These were different, thoughtful, questioning. My mother had spent years crafting her image as the devoted single mom with the ungrateful daughter. But images, like utility bills, can be subject to scrutiny. In my car, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. I'd just violated one of our family's cardinal rules: never air dirty laundry in public. But some things, I was learning, needed to be brought into the light. The for rent sign caught my eye during my morning run, a small cottage set back from the street, surrounded by maple trees. It wasn't anything like my mother's carefully manicured house. This place had character. Slightly weathered shutters, a wraparound porch with an old porch swing, window boxes ready for flowers. It looked like something from my childhood drawings, back when I still believed I could shape my own future. "It needs some TLC," the landlady, Mrs. Rodriguez, admitted as she showed me around. "But it's got good bones, and it's all yours if you want it. No roommates, no co-signers needed." No co-signers. The words hit me like a beam of sunlight. For the first time, I was looking at a place that would be entirely mine. No strings attached, no guilt trips, no financial entanglements. Just my name on the lease, my choices on the walls, my life in the spaces. The porch swing squeaks, Mrs. Rodriguez added apologetically. I like squeaky swings, I replied, surprising myself with the truth of it. They remind you that you're moving. Back at Sarah's that evening, I was packing my few belongings when my phone rang. It was Aunt Carol, the first direct contact since my confrontation with Mom at the coffee shop 3 days ago. I owe you an apology, she said without preamble. I've been going through some old financial records, trying to help your mother sort things out. Emma, I had no idea. All these years we all just assumed. Her voice trailed off, and I felt an unexpected wave of compassion. How many other people had my mother wrapped into her carefully constructed narrative? It's okay, I said softly. You weren't supposed to know. That was the whole point. Linda, your mother, she's telling people you stole from her, Aunt Carol continued. But these records, Emma, you've been supporting her entirely for years, haven't you? While she paused. I found receipts for spa weekends, shopping trips, salon visits, all while you were working double shifts at the hospital. I'm not looking for anyone to take sides, I told her, folding a sweater that was actually mine, bought with my own, money for my own pleasure. I just needed to stop the pattern. Well, people are starting to see the truth, she replied. Linda's stories aren't adding up anymore. Yesterday at church, when she started talking about her ungrateful daughter, Mrs. Chen from your old Sunday school class spoke up, said her daughter's a lawyer who recently helped a young woman escape financial abuse from a family member. Funny coincidence, isn't it? I smiled, making a mental note to send Jennifer Chen's mom a thank you card. The cottage is available. Immediately, I said, changing the subject. I'm signing the lease tomorrow. Do you need help moving? Aunt Carol asked. I make a mean box-packing playlist. Actually, I said slowly, I'd like that. That night, I sat on Sarah's balcony, looking at stars I'd been too busy to notice before. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. You've turned everyone against me. I hope you're happy with yourself. For the first time, her words didn't trigger an immediate rush of guilt. Instead, I felt something different. Peace. I typed back a simple response. I hope you find happiness too, Mom. I really do. Then I opened my laptop and started making a list. Cottage dreams. Paint colors for the bedroom. Herbs for the kitchen windowsill. A pottery wheel for the spare room that would become my studio. Small dreams, perhaps, but they were mine. All mine. My first night in the cottage, I woke at 2 a.m. in a panic, reaching for my phone to check if Mom had called about another emergency. Then I remembered. I wasn't responsible for her emergencies anymore. The realization felt like taking a full breath after years of shallow breathing. The moonlight filtered through my uncurtained windows, casting gentle shadows on the hardwood. Floors. I'd only brought my essentials. A bed, a dresser, my favorite reading chair, and boxes of books I'd been collecting secretly over the years. The space felt both empty and full of possibility, like a blank canvas waiting for the first brushstroke. My phone lit up, not with Mom's calls, but with a message from Dr. Richards, my supervisor at the hospital. Emma, I've been meaning to talk to you. That position in the cardiac care unit you asked about last year, it's opening up again. Includes the certification program you wanted. Interested? I sat up in bed, my heart racing. The position I'd turned down because Mom had guilt-tripped me about working longer hours. Moving up means moving away from family, she'd said. Is that really what you want? I'd believed her then, convinced that professional growth was selfish if it meant less time for family obligations. I'd love to discuss it, I typed back, then added, and yes, I can do the irregular hours now. Morning brought another surprise. As I was unpacking boxes in my tiny kitchen, There was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Mrs. Chen, Jennifer's mother and my old Sunday school teacher, holding a pot of something that smelled delicious. "Homemade congee," she said, pushing past me into the kitchen. "Jennifer told me you moved in here. Every new home needs a first meal that isn't from a takeout container." She began opening cabinets, looking for bowls, seemingly unperturbed by their emptiness. "Mrs. Chen, you didn't have to—" "Sit," she commanded, and I found myself obeying, just like in Sunday school. She served 2 bowls of the steaming rice porridge, then sat across from me at my small kitchen table. "Now, tell me everything your mother doesn't want people to know." I stared at her, startled by her directness. "I'm not trying to spread gossip." "No, you're trying to protect her even now," she interrupted. "Just like my sister protected our mother for 20 years while she drained her savings. Sometimes silence protects the wrong person, Emma." Over congee that tasted like comfort itself, I told her everything. The joint accounts, the credit cards, the mortgage payments, the utility bills, the careful calculations I'd made every month to keep her lifestyle afloat while my own dreams gathered dust. "You know what the real scandal is?" Mrs. Chen said when I finished. "Not that you stopped supporting her. It's that all of us, your church family, your neighbors, your mother's friends, we saw you working yourself to exhaustion, and we believed her story that you were just being a good daughter." She reached across the table and took my hand. "But you're showing everyone a different kind of good daughter now. One who tells the truth, even when it's hard. One who shows other young women that they don't have to set themselves on fire to keep someone else warm." After she left, I stood in my kitchen, looking at the empty cabinets with new eyes. Each vacant shelf represented a choice I could make for myself now. I opened my laptop and pulled up the hospital's internal job board, finding the cardiac care unit posting. The certification program would take 18 months, with irregular hours and intensive study requirements. Everything Mom had convinced me was too selfish to pursue. My phone buzzed. A message from Mom. "The house feels so empty without you. I miss my little girl. Remember when you were small and you said you'd take care of me forever? What happened to that sweet child?" I touched my screen, feeling an old familiar ache, but no longer feeling the crushing guilt. "She grew up," I typed back, "and she learned that forever promises made by children shouldn't be collected on by adults." Then I turned back to the job application, filling in my qualifications with a new sense of purpose. That little girl had grown up indeed, not into the perpetual caretaker her mother had tried to shape, but into something else entirely. A woman who finally understood that taking care of herself wasn't selfish, it was essential. The cardiac care unit orientation packet sat on my new desk, thick with possibility. Dr. Richards had fast-tracked my application, and now, 3 weeks after moving into my cottage, I was starting the certification program I'd dreamed about for years. The familiar scent of hospital disinfectant felt different somehow, less like obligation and more like opportunity. "Walker," Dr. Richards called from the doorway. "Ready for your first advanced cardiac assessment?" Her smile was knowing. She'd been pushing me toward this specialization for 2 years, seeing potential I'd been too trapped to embrace. "More than ready," I replied, following her to the patient's room. As we walked, my phone vibrated continuously in my pocket. Mom's latest strategy. After her guilt trips about the empty house had failed to move me, she'd switched tactics. Now she was in full medical crisis mode. The messages had started at dawn. Severe chest pains. Then, can barely breathe. Followed by, if you cared, you'd answer. And finally, what if I'm really dying this time? Years of conditioning made my hands shake as I tried to focus on the patient's chart. The old Emma would have rushed to her side, called off work, spent hours in emergency rooms only to discover yet another false alarm. But I wasn't that Emma anymore. "Everything okay?" Dr. Richards asked, noticing my distraction. Family stuff, I said, then corrected myself. No, manipulation stuff. But I'm here, and I'm focused. She nodded approvingly. Good. Because Mrs. Henderson here has some fascinating arrhythmia patterns I want you to analyze. For the next hour, I lost myself in learning. Really learning, without one eye on my phone or half my mind wondering what crisis Mom would manufacture next. The complexity of cardiac care demanded complete attention, and for once, I could give it. During lunch break, I checked my messages. Mom had escalated to sending photos of old pill bottles, claiming she might accidentally take too many. My hands trembled as I made a call. Not to her, but to the non-emergency police line. Yes, I'd like to request a welfare check, I said calmly, giving them her address. My mother is sending concerning messages about self-harm. I'm a medical professional, and while I believe this is manipulation, I want to ensure she's safe. Within an hour, I received a call back. They'd found her having lunch with friends at her favorite restaurant, perfectly fine. The officer's voice held a note of understanding when he said they'd documented the incident. Back in the cardiac unit, I threw myself into afternoon training. We were discussing advanced heart failure symptoms when Sarah texted, "Your mom just posted a long Facebook rant about ungrateful children who abandon their sick parents. Want me to send screenshots?" "No need," I replied. Not my circus anymore. That evening, I had my first pottery class, another dream Mom had labeled selfish and impractical. The feel of clay under my fingers was therapeutic, grounding. My first attempt at a bowl was hilariously lopsided, but my instructor, Jack, just grinned. "Perfect imperfection," he said. "Sometimes the flaws make the piece more interesting." I was washing clay from my hands when Mom's latest message arrived. "I raised you better than this. A daughter who abandons her mother will never find happiness. You'll regret this when I'm gone." Looking at my clay-stained fingers, I thought about her words. I had found happiness. In my work, my tiny cottage, my wobbly ceramic attempts. It wasn't the happiness she'd prescribed for me, the kind that came from sacrificing everything for her approval. It was messier, more authentic, and entirely my own. That night, I added another item to my growing collection of firsts. My first boundary-setting email to my mother. "Mom, I love you, but I won't respond to medical manipulation or threats of self-harm. I've documented your messages and will continue to request welfare checks if you suggest you might hurt yourself. I hope you'll get the help you need to build a healthy life, just as I'm building mine." Then I turned my phone off and worked on sketches for my next pottery project, a tea set with an imperfect beauty all its own. Some things I was learning had to break before they could be remade. The conference room fell silent as I finished presenting my research on innovative cardiac care protocols. 6 months into my certification program, I'd developed a new approach to post-operative patient monitoring that had caught the attention of hospital administration. Dr. Richards beamed from her seat, while the chief of cardiology nodded approvingly. "Excellent work, Ms. Walker," he said, closing his portfolio. "We'd like you to present this at the National Cardiac Care Symposium in Seattle next month. Your findings could significantly impact patient care standards." Seattle, the city I'd once dreamed of working in, before Mom had made it impossible. Now, here it was again, offering not just a visit but a platform to share my work. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of irony. "Thank you, sir," I replied, my voice steady. "I'd be honored." As the room cleared, Dr. Richards stayed behind. "Emma, this is huge. The symposium is a launching pad for medical careers. The networking alone." She paused, studying my face. "Why do you look worried?" Before I could answer, my phone lit, up with a series of messages. Mom had outdone herself this time. "How dare you tell the police I was faking medical emergencies?" The first message read, "I just ran into Officer Martinez at the grocery store. He treated me like I was some kind of criminal. Then, I've called a family meeting for Sunday. Everyone needs to know how you've betrayed this family. Your Aunt Carol, Uncle Jim, all your cousins. They'll all be there. Last chance to make things right. And finally, if you don't come home and fix this, I'll have no choice but to tell everyone everything. About the money you stole, the lies you've told, how you abandoned your sick mother. Is that what you want? Dr. Richards read the messages over my shoulder, her expression hardening. Emma, this is harassment. It's Thursday, I said quietly. The family meeting is meant to conflict with my Seattle presentation on Sunday. She doesn't even know about it, but somehow... I laughed, a strange hollow sound. Somehow she still manages to schedule her ambush for exactly when I need to be somewhere else. What are you going to do? I looked down at my presentation materials, then at my phone. 6 months ago, I would have canceled everything, rushed to that family meeting, spent hours defending myself against accusations while Mom played the victim. 3 months ago, I might have tried to do both, exhausting myself, trying to please everyone. But today, I opened my email and began to type, "Dear family, I understand Mom has called a meeting about me for Sunday. Since she's chosen to make this public, let me be equally public with my response." Attached are bank statements showing every dollar I've contributed to Mom's lifestyle over the past 6 years. Also attached are records of credit cards opened in my name without my knowledge, along with police reports documenting Mom's pattern of fabricating medical emergencies. I won't be attending the meeting because I'll be presenting my cardiac care research at a national medical symposium, the kind of opportunity I used to pass up because Mom convinced me that professional growth was selfish. You'll probably hear that I'm lying, that I'm cruel, that I'm abandoning my family. You've heard these stories before about others who've stood up to Mom. Maybe it's time to ask yourselves why the story never changes, only the target. I love you all, but I won't participate in my own character assassination. If anyone wants to know the truth, my door is always open. Love, Emma. I hit send before I could second-guess myself, then turned to Dr. Richards. I should start preparing for Seattle. I have some ideas for expanding the presentation. She smiled, squeezing my shoulder. You know, I've been supervising residents for 20 years, watching them grow not just as doctors, but as people. Sometimes the biggest breakthroughs aren't medical at all. That evening, as I sat on my porch swing working on my presentation, the responses to my email began rolling in. Aunt Carol, we're proud of you. Go change cardiac care. Cousin Rachel, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. Uncle Jim, your mother just uninvited me from the meeting. Guess she didn't like me asking about those credit card statements. The last message was from Mom. You've ruined everything. I hope you're satisfied. I looked up at my cottage, with its newly planted window boxes and the pottery wind chimes I'd made hanging from the porch. Through the window, I could see my small but growing collection of ceramic pieces, each one beautifully imperfect. On my laptop screen, my presentation waited. My own research, my own voice, my own contribution to medical science. Actually, I whispered to the evening air, I am satisfied. Seattle embraced me with misty rain and endless possibilities. Standing at my hotel window, looking out at the Space Needle piercing through morning clouds, I felt a profound sense of what could have been, and what still could be. The conference center was visible from my room, its modern architecture a testament to progress and innovation, much like the city itself. My phone had been unusually quiet since the mass email. Mom's family meeting had apparently dissolved into chaos when several relatives started asking uncomfortable questions about the financial records I'd shared. According to Sarah, who heard it from Aunt Carol, Mom had stormed out of her own house when Uncle Jim suggested she seek counseling for her manipulative tendencies. Dr. Walker, a knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. One of the symposium coordinators stood there with a conference schedule. We've had several department heads request private meetings with you after your presentation. Your research has generated quite a buzz. I glanced at the schedule she handed me. Chief of Cardiology at Mass General, Director of Cardiac Research at Mayo Clinic, leading hospitals across the country, interested in my work. My work, not my ability to manage my mother's crises or fund her lifestyle, but my actual professional contributions. As I prepared, in my hotel room, I remembered the last time I'd planned to come to Seattle. Mom had developed mysterious heart palpitations the week before my scheduled job interview, leading to 3 emergency room visits that found nothing wrong. I'd canceled the interview to stay with her, believing her dramatic claims that she couldn't bear the stress of me moving away. Now, standing before the mirror in my carefully chosen professional outfit, I saw someone different from that scared, manipulated daughter. My presentation materials were meticulously prepared, my research solid, my confidence real. The chain of emotional blackmail that had once held me back lay broken. My phone buzzed. Not Mom this time, but Jennifer Chen, my lawyer. Just thought, you'd want to know. Your mother tried to refinance the house using some old documents with your signature. Don't worry, I've already contacted the bank and blocked it. Go knock them dead in Seattle. I should have felt angry or hurt. Instead, I felt something close to pity. Mom's desperate attempts to maintain control were becoming increasingly transparent, not just to me, but to everyone around her. The presentation room was packed. As I took my place at the podium, I caught sight of Dr. Richards in the audience. She'd flown in that morning to support me. Next to her sat Dr. Sarah Martinez from Seattle General, the same hospital I'd once hoped to work for. She'd reached out after seeing my research abstract, mentioning that they were expanding their cardiac care unit. "Good morning," I began, my voice clear and confident. "Today I'll be presenting a new approach to post-operative cardiac monitoring that could reduce recovery complications by up to 40%. For the next hour, I owned that room. Every question from the audience received a thorough, knowledgeable response. Every data point in my presentation told a story of innovation and possibility. When I finished, the applause wasn't just polite, it was enthusiastic. "Brilliant work," Dr. Martinez said afterward, shaking my hand. "We should talk about your future plans. Seattle General's offer from 2 years ago? Consider it still open, with significant upgrades." As we discussed potential opportunities, my phone lit up with a message from Mom. "I know you're trying to punish me by moving to Seattle. Think about what this will do to my health, to our family, to my reputation in the community." Dr. Martinez noticed my brief glance at the phone. "Everything okay?" I slipped the phone back into my pocket, unread messages and all. "Everything's perfect, actually. Now, tell me more about your cardiac research department." Later that evening, at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city, Dr. Richards raised a glass. "To new beginnings," she said. I looked out at the Seattle skyline, glittering with possibility. 2 years ago, I'd let this city slip away, convinced that staying close to Mom was my only option. Now I was back, not as a hopeful job seeker, but as a respected professional with multiple offers and a future full of choices. "To new beginnings," I echoed, and to finally understanding that some distances, physical and emotional, are necessary for growth. The Space Needle glowed against the night sky, a beacon of progress and change. Mom's message remained unread on my phone, but my path forward was crystal clear. Sometimes the best response to manipulation is simply to soar beyond its reach. The employment contract from Seattle General lay on my cottage kitchen table, its pages crisp and full of promise. Dr. Martinez hadn't just matched my current salary. She'd doubled it, adding research opportunities and leadership responsibilities I'd never dared to dream about. Next to it sat a smaller envelope, the key to my cottage, ready to be returned to Mrs. Rodriguez. "You'll always have a home here if Seattle doesn't work out," Mrs. Rodriguez had said that morning, hugging me fiercely. "But something tells me you won't need it." The news of my impending move had spread through our small town like wildfire, generating two distinct reactions. From my colleagues and friends, there was genuine celebration. From my mother's circle, there was a carefully orchestrated campaign of concern and criticism. Linda's beside herself. Mrs. Peterson had cornered me at the grocery store yesterday. Moving across the country without considering your poor mother's feelings, after everything she's done for you? I'd smiled, continuing to select my vegetables. Yes, after everything she's done for me and everything I've done for her, I'm finally doing something for myself. But Mom's latest strategy was her most dramatic yet. She'd shown up at the hospital during my shift, clutching a stack of photo albums. "Look at these pictures, Emma," she'd called out in the busy corridor. "Look how happy we were before you became so selfish." Dr. Richards had appeared like a guardian angel, smoothly steering Mom toward the exit. "Mrs. Walker, this is a cardiac care unit. If you're not experiencing a genuine medical emergency, you'll need to leave." Now, sitting at my kitchen table, I picked up my phone and opened the family group chat Mom had created to pray for Emma's return to her senses. "Dear family," I typed. "I've accepted the position at Seattle General. I start in 6 weeks. Mom, I've arranged for a financial advisor to help you manage your resources. Aunt Carol has agreed to go with you to the first appointment. I love you all, and I'll miss you. But this is the right decision for my future." The responses were immediate. Aunt Carol: "So proud of you, sweetheart." Uncle Jim: "Seattle won't know what hit it." Cousin Rachel: "Need help packing?" Mom's response came privately: "If you leave, don't expect to be welcomed back. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of daughter you really are. See you." Took a deep breath and typed my reply. "Mom, I already know what kind of daughter I am. I'm the kind who supported you financially for years without complaint. I'm the kind who canceled her dreams to fulfill your needs. I'm also the kind who's finally learned that love shouldn't require self-destruction. I'll always be your daughter, but I won't always be your banker, your emotional crutch, or your sacrificial lamb. I hope someday you'll understand that this distance is necessary for both of us to grow." Then I did something I'd never done before. I muted her number. Not blocked, just muted. It felt like opening a window in a stuffy room. The afternoon sun streamed through my cottage windows as I began packing. Each box represented a piece of my new life. My medical texts, my growing collection of pottery, the small but meaningful items I'd bought with my own money for my own pleasure. Sarah arrived with pizza and packing tape, and soon we had a rhythm going. "Look what I found," she said, pulling something from a shelf. A small ceramic bowl, my first successful piece from pottery class. It was still slightly lopsided, but the glaze had turned out beautifully, deep blues swirling into greens. "It's like you," Sarah continued, carefully wrapping the bowl. "Not perfect, but perfectly yourself." As we packed, my phone occasionally lit up with messages from my mother's friends, each one carrying a different flavor of guilt or judgment. But they felt distant now, like echoes from a life I'd outgrown. "You know what's funny?" I said to Sarah, labeling a box of medical journals. "Everyone keeps talking about how I'm abandoning my mother, but nobody mentions how she abandoned me first. Not physically, but emotionally. She abandoned her role as a mother the moment she decided to treat me like an ATM instead of a daughter." "And now you're choosing yourself," Sarah replied, "which is exactly what she's afraid of. Because once you realize you can choose yourself and survive, thrive, even, her power disappears." I picked up the Seattle General contract, running my fingers over the embossed hospital logo. In 6 weeks, I'd be Dr. Emma Walker, cardiac, care specialist, not just Linda's daughter or the town's cautionary tale of familial obligation gone too far. The setting sun cast long shadows through my half-packed cottage. But for once, the approaching darkness held no anxiety, no dread of late-night emergency calls or manufactured crises. Instead, It felt like the ending of one chapter and the beginning of another. One where I was finally the author of my own story. My last week in town unfolded like a series of quiet revelations. Each farewell carried its own weight, its own lesson, its own form of closure. The hospital staff had organized a goodbye party, complete with a cake decorated with a space needle made of frosting. Dr. Richards gave a speech that made us both tear up, highlighting not just my professional growth, but my personal transformation. Sometimes, she'd said, the best medicine we learn isn't about healing others, but about healing ourselves. I was clearing out my locker when an unexpected visitor appeared. Mrs. Chen, not Jennifer this time, but my mother's oldest friend, Margaret Chen. She stood in the doorway, elegant as always, holding what looked like an old photograph. "Your mother and I were best friends in high school," she said without preamble, holding out the photo. "Did you know that she once had dreams as big as yours?" The photograph showed two teenage girls in graduation caps, beaming at the camera. One was clearly my mother, younger and brighter than I'd ever seen her. "She'd been accepted to journalism school," Margaret continued, "full scholarship. But her mother guilt-tripped her into staying home, caring for the family. Sound familiar?" I sat down heavily on the locker room bench. "She never told me." "No, she wouldn't have. Instead, she repeated the pattern, turning you into her safety net just as she'd been for her mother. But you," Margaret's eyes crinkled with something. "Like pride, but you broke the chain?" "I didn't want to," I admitted. "I tried so hard to be what she needed." "That's exactly why you had to leave," Margaret said softly. "Because you would have kept trying until there was nothing left of you. Just like she did." She pressed the photo into my hands. "Take it. Remember that patterns can be broken, but someone has to be brave enough to break them first." The next revelation came during my final pottery class. Jack had organized a small exhibition of student work, and to my surprise, my wobbly first attempt sat proudly alongside more sophisticated pieces. "Look at your progression," he said, gesturing from my first lopsided bowl to my recent tea set. "See how each piece gets a little more confident? That's not just about clay, Emma." I touched each piece gently, remembering the state of mind I'd been in while creating them. The early ones showed tension in their uneven walls, like my own contained anxiety. The later pieces flowed more freely, their forms more assured, mirroring my growing confidence. The biggest surprise came the day before my departure. I was doing a final walkthrough of my cottage when Aunt Carol arrived with an unexpected package. "We found these in your mother's attic," she said, opening a box filled with my childhood art and writings. "Look at this one." It was a story I'd written in 4th grade, illustrated with crayon drawings. The tale followed a young girl who built wings from discarded feathers and flew away to find her own path. My mother had written a note in the margin. "Emma has such an imagination. I worry about these stories of escape." "She knew," I whispered, touching the faded papers. Even then, she knew I'd eventually need to fly. That evening, as I sat on my porch swing one last time, a familiar car pulled up. My mother stepped out, looking smaller somehow, more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. "I found this in my jewelry box," she said, holding out a small object. I thought you might want it." It was a tiny ceramic pinch pot, crude, and clearly made by child's hands. On the bottom, in wobbly letters, "For Mommy, love, Emma." "You kept it," I said, surprised. "I keep everything you make." Her voice cracked slightly. "Even when I pretend I don't." We stood in silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. Finally, she spoke again. "I don't know how to be a mother who doesn't need her daughter to be her savior." "And I don't know how to be a daughter who isn't one," I replied gently. "Maybe that's why Seattle isn't just about my career. Maybe we both need to learn new ways to exist, She nodded, then turned to leave, pausing at her car. Emma, that scholarship I turned down 30 years ago? Don't ever let anyone tell you that choosing yourself is selfish. I should have told you that sooner. As her car disappeared, down the street, I held the small pinch pot in my hands. Tomorrow, it would join my other pottery in boxes bound for Seattle. But tonight, it served as a reminder that some bonds don't need to be broken to be reformed. They just need space to be reshaped into something new, something healthier, something that allows both people to grow their own wings. Seattle greeted me with sunshine on moving day, defying its rainy reputation. My new apartment overlooked Lake Union, where boats dotted the water like scattered thoughts finding their way home. The morning light caught the Space Needle at just the right angle, making it gleam like a beacon of possibility. Last box, Sarah announced, setting down a carefully wrapped package in my new kitchen. She'd insisted on flying out with me to help with the move, claiming she couldn't trust movers with my pottery collection. But we both knew she wanted to see me safely across this threshold. I unwrapped the box slowly, revealing my collection of ceramic pieces. My creative journey, documented in clay. The wobbly first bowl, the increasingly confident tea set, the small pinch pot my mother had returned to me. And there, wrapped separately, was a piece I hadn't seen before. It's from Jack, Sarah explained. He fired it after your last class. The piece was a small sculpture of wings, glazed in subtle blues and greens that shifted in the light. A note accompanied it. Some things need to break free to become what they're meant to be. My phone chimed, a text from Dr. Martinez, welcoming me to Seattle General, confirming my Monday start date. Another message followed from Jennifer Chen. Mom wants you to know your old Sunday school class is praying for your success, not your return. Progress. I smiled, remembering Mrs. Chen's kanji and straight-talking wisdom. The messages continued. Congratulations from Dr. Richards, a funny meme from Uncle Jim, a heart emoji from Aunt Carol, and then, unexpectedly, a message from my mother. I started therapy last week. It read, Margaret Chen recommended someone. I'm not ready to talk about everything yet, but I'm trying to understand why I couldn't let you fly. Maybe someday we can both spread our wings without fearing we'll lose each other. Tears blurred my vision as I set the phone down. Through my apartment window, I could see the hospital where I'd be starting my new position, its modern architecture, a stark contrast to the familiar buildings of my hometown. Everything was different here. The air, the rhythm, the possibilities. Sarah found me unpacking my medical texts in what would become my home office. You okay? I'm thinking about patterns, I said, running my fingers along the spines of my cardiac care books. Mom stayed because her mother made her feel guilty about leaving. I almost stayed because Mom did the same to me. But patterns can be rewritten. Speaking of rewriting, Sarah grinned, pulling out a course catalog. Seattle Community College, pottery classes, already signed you up for the advanced workshop. I laughed, but my eyes caught on something else in the catalog. Evening. Journalism classes. I took a photo and, after a moment's hesitation, sent it to my mother. It's never too late to chase old dreams, I wrote. That evening, after Sarah left for her flight home, I stood on my balcony watching the sunset paint the Seattle skyline in shades of possibility. Below, the city pulsed with life and movement. Tomorrow, I'd begin my new position at Seattle General. Next week, I'd start pottery classes. In between, I'd learn to navigate this new life I'd chosen for myself. My phone buzzed one last time. Mom had replied to my message about the journalism classes. Maybe you're right, about it not being too late, about a lot of things. Fly, safe, my brave girl. I touched the ceramic wings Jack had given me, now displayed on my windowsill where the morning light would catch them. The piece wasn't perfect. There were small flaws in the glaze, tiny irregularities in the feathers. But that's what made it beautiful. Like me, like my mother, like our slowly healing relationship. It was perfectly imperfect. From my balcony, I could see both where I was going and where I'd been. The past didn't disappear. It had shaped me, taught me, strengthened me, but it no longer defined me. I was Dr. Emma Walker now, cardiac specialist, artist, survivor, daughter on my own terms. My wings weren't built from discarded feathers like in my childhood story. They were forged from hard-won wisdom, from broken patterns, from the courage to choose myself. And finally, wonderfully, I was ready to soar. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Give it a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video!